name's Chris. My name is Ben. I'm at the Rocky Mountain Land Library. Can everybody hear me? Is that good? Thumbs up? Okay. First of all, thank you to Sand Creek Massacre Foundation for partnering with us on this event. And thank you to National Western Center for providing space for this event. And to our other partner, Boulder Bookstore. We're a nonprofit based here in Denver and in Park County. Our mission is to nurture the human spirit through nature, community, and books. So we have a collection of about 50,000 books on natural history, land art, photography, indigenous food practices, poetry, really anything related to how humans interact with the natural world. Right now we're rehabilitating one of the oldest ranches in Colorado. It is about 2 hours west of Denver. It dates back to 1862. There's about 10 buildings across 36 acres. So our vision is to put those 50,000 books in those 10 buildings and create an artist retreat and nature library. So one of our primary goals at the ranch and in general is to help tell all the different cultural histories that weave across the land there, primarily indigenous histories that date back at least 10,000 years and back in prehistory. So we're very proud to partner with Sand Creek Massacre Foundation on this event, and we're really excited to help bring this really incredible group of panelists together. Should be a really meaningful conversation. Thank you.
Today. We are proud to be partnering with the Rocky Mountain Land Library for this event, and I'd also like to thank the National Western Center and Boulder Bookstore for their support. The Foundation's mission is to educate the public about the history of the massacre, as well as its context and consequences. Tonight, we will explore the ways that history connects to the present through the story of Captain Silas Soule. His brave acts of standing down during the attack at Sand Creek and testifying about what he witnessed give us a moral roadmap to follow when authority compromises humanity to obtain and hold power. Thank you to our panelists for being here tonight to share their unique perspectives on Silas's legacy with us. Before I introduce our moderator, can all of the Sand Creek Massacre Foundation board members please raise your hands? Please feel free to come up and ask questions about the foundation after the event. We'll have a Q&A session, as well as Nancy Niero will be signing copies of her book, and we'll have a reception afterwards as well. So please stay and ask questions. So I'd like to introduce our moderator, journalist Kevin Simpson. Kevin is a co-founder of the Colorado Sun, where he writes, edits, and oversees the Sun's literary feature, Sunlit. After arriving in Denver in 1979, he wrote sports for the Rocky Mountain News for 5 years. He then moved to the Denver Post, where he spent 33 years as a sports writer, city desk reporter, city columnist, and long-form writer before leaving in 2018 to help start the Sun. Please join us in welcoming our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you all for taking time to be here this evening. This year-long recognition of our nation's 250th birthday, and in just about a week, the 150th birthday of Colorado statehood, has been a really fitting occasion to revisit and reflect on the broad sweep of our shared history, as well as how that history is told and who does the telling. Tonight, we're narrowing our focus to an individual whose birthday happens to be tomorrow. And though he died long ago, at just 26 years old, his impact was significant, both for the way his actions influenced events at the time and how they ultimately changed the way we understand our history. The very fact that you're here tonight suggests that you might already know something about Captain Silas Soule of the Colorado Cavalry. You're probably familiar with his refusal to follow orders from Colonel John Shivington to attack a peaceful Cheyenne and Arapaho encampment in 1864 during what became known as the Sand Creek Massacre. But perhaps surprisingly, a lot of Coloradans, many who were born and grew up here, are not familiar with his story. So if anyone needs a quick refresher, we've got a one-page bio. And at the bottom, there's a QR code that will connect you with one of his most significant letters that he wrote as well, just for a little background. Well, now let's learn a little more about the panelists who will be discussing the impact of Silas Soule. First, we have Byron Strom in the middle here, the great-great-nephew of Silas Soule. And Byron, your family connection kind of speaks for itself. But tell us a little bit about how Silas Soule came to play such a significant role in your life.
Can you hear me? It's really nice to be here this evening. I was born in Kansas because my ancestors came to Kansas from the Northeast, my mom's side. I, however, grew up near the Badlands in South Dakota because my father had work, soil conservation work near the Badlands. And I studied chemistry at a Des Moines area community at Iowa State University and taught for 30 years at Des Moines Area Community College. I still live in Des Moines, but my connection to Silas is because of my family. It turns out that Silas's sister, Annie, ended up living in Lawrence, Kansas. She actually raised my grandmother and her sister, and that means that my mom heard a lot of stories about Silas, and so that got passed on to me.
Next, we have the Reverend Dr. Nancy Niero, and at the end there, author of Witness at Sand Creek, The Life and Letters of Silas Soule. She's not a relative, but sometimes calls herself an ancestor by choice. Nancy, tell us a little about how your life is intersected with Silas Soule.
Thank you, Kevin. I have journeyed with Silas for more than 30 years, first as a museum educator at the Colorado History Museum, when it was at the first location on 13th and Broadway, not today's location. That beloved museum was where I took care of 5,000 of the 4th and 5th graders who visited the museum every year. And on my first new employee tour, there was a portrait that was something like that, hanging on the wall in the basement of the museum. And I said, "Who is that?" And my tour guide said, "Well, that's Silas Soule. He disobeyed orders at the Sand Creek Massacre and then wrote a letter. And then he was assassinated on the streets of Denver soon after." And every time I was able to do a tour of those 4th and 5th graders, I would take them to that portrait downstairs in the basement. And at that's how I began to learn more about him and his story and his life. And so I ended up going to Iowa School of Theology, where I did 4 independent studies of his life and wanted to know how a person could grow up to be somebody who would disobey orders at the Sand Creek Massacre. And ultimately, in my journey of writing those 4 independent studies, I've done research from Massachusetts to Colorado to New Mexico to Kansas. And now I went on pilgrimages in 2024 to where almost all of the places where he wrote a letter, except for Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I went to New Mexico, went throughout Colorado, and followed his trail and where he went. And I followed his landscape, and I followed all the places that he saw on his adventures and journeys that ultimately brought him to Fort Lyon in 1864.
But finally, here we have Chris Tallbear. Chris, your perspective bears particular relevance not only in terms of the way history is remembered, but also by the very fact that you're here with us tonight. Tell us a little about yourself and your connection to Silas.
All right, let's see if this does what Byron is doing. No? Wait for it? There it goes. All right. I guess my presence tonight, I come as a representative of the Cheyenne Council of 44, as well as a direct descendant of Sand Creek survivors. Through my father's ancestor, his name was Greasy Nose, and through my mother's line, carrying the lineage of a Cheyenne Dock Soldier Chief Graybeard. When Kevin asked how I tie myself to Silas Soule, it comes down to 3 things: blood, governance, and truth. On November 29th, the camp at Sand Creek was the Chief's camp. It was an intentional gathering of peace leadership under a white flag of truce and the American flag. Colonel Shivington wasn't just trying to kill people, he was attempting to erase our traditional government structure and the very council that I sit on today, the Cheyenne Council of 44. Captain Silas Soule saw that camp. He recognized the peace protocol and refused to fire. But his greatest act of courage came afterward, when he put ink to paper, put that in writing. When the military tried to cover up the massacre by calling it a heroic battle, Soule weaponized the truth. His letters corroborated what our families preserved through our oral history. And I tie my presence here tonight to Captain Soule because of his refusal to participate in that slaughter and help to ensure that our bloodlines survived. And our leadership traditions endured, and that the true record was preserved. I sit down here not just as a survivor's descendant, but as a living continuation of the leadership Shivington failed to destroy. So that's why I'm here.
So we're going to divide the discussion tonight into different sections here, and I think we're going to start out talking about the theme of Silas Soule's letters and how they functioned as a whistleblower mechanism, so to speak, that they forced institutional accountability, as Chris was saying. So I'd like to start with Byron here. Byron, tell us when and how you first became aware of your great-great-uncle's letters, and more than that, how you realized their significance, and then maybe perhaps also talk a little bit about how you came to actually read one of those letters at the Healing Run in 2003.
Of course, I knew about Silas from early on, but I didn't really have any idea about any letters. But in 1960s, Dr. Raymond Carey of Denver University, who was retired by then, I believe, was interested in the Sand Creek Massacre, and he was looking for information. He contacted my family, my Aunt Ann, who lived south of Lawrence, Kansas, and asked about materials that she might have, which included letters. And I think that that's what propelled her to make searches in the attic of the old stone house there on the farm to find those letters and made copies for him and sent them to him. And so those letters started to be available to people in the 60s. And I was in high school then, and I knew about that. In 1983, our family, Becky and I and our 2 daughters, took a train trip to California, and we passed through Denver on the way. My aunt, my dad's sister, lived in Denver at the time, and we got to see her, and we visited downtown Denver. I remember being at the Capitol and seeing the statue of the soldier, and on the side there are plaques that list the names of the soldiers that died during the Civil War, and his name was on there. And I started thinking to myself, because how old was I then? I was 37 years old. I realized I didn't really know very much about Silas. And so I started contacting my Aunt Ann, who was the family historian, and I started to get these stories. I got the letters from her, and I started typing them out, and that led to clues, and I started doing the research. In 2000, we're going to hear about the letter of Silas that was discovered. And of course, nobody knew about that, but the fact that that letter was available until 2000 when it was discovered. And that was a very exciting thing for me, because I've been collecting these letters. And any other letters, if you have any out there, if you find any, let me know, please. In 2003, the Cheyenne and Arapaho had been holding healing runs since 1999 or so, something like that. And in 2003, they discovered where Silas was buried, in Riverside Cemetery. Now, Dr. Carey had told our family